Hi, I'm James Ezimoha. Welcome to Africa News, where we bring you the latest updates from across the African continent. Let's dive in. Puntland forces make progress in their fight against the Islamic State in Somalia. Thousands displaced by fighting in eastern Congo fear further attacks if they return home. Deadly airstrike kills 54 in Sudan. At least 54 people have been killed and 158 wounded in a strike on a crowded market in Sudan. The Sudanese Health Ministry blames the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, but the group denies responsibility. Video released by Khartoum's state media shows bodies wrapped in white and black bags on the ground after the attack. The injured were seen receiving treatment at a nearby hospital. Sudan's health ministry says the RSF targeted the market, but the paramilitary group blames the army for the strike. The ongoing war, which began in April 2023, has devastated Sudan, killing tens of thousands and displacing millions. Both sides have been accused of hitting civilian areas. With no ceasefire in sight, the humanitarian crisis deepens. Thousands displaced by fighting in eastern Congo say they fear further attacks and sexual violence if they return home. M23 rebels backed by Rwanda have taken Goma and continued the advance south, worsening an already dire humanitarian crisis.
Conflict in eastern Congo has forced thousands to flee, with many seeking shelter in schools and makeshift camps. In Goma, survivors report looting and sexual violence by armed groups with little access to aid. Congo's health ministry says nearly 800 bodies are in hospital morgues, while calls for a ceasefire grow louder. At a school-turned-shelter in Goma, displaced people describe relentless attacks and violence against women and girls.
I am from Sake. I fled the rebel bombardments because they had killed many people. I lived for 1 year in Nzulo as a displaced person, but there too the recent war made me flee to Kimashini. But there too we fled, after being attacked by looters who took everything from us until we arrived here at this school. We sleep on the ground with nothing. As you see us here, we have nothing, neither food nor anything to sleep on. Yes, this really happened. Many among us have been raped. The rebel forces enter houses and rape mothers and daughters. If they find them together in the house, they rape them all together in their tent. They loot and rape women and girls. That's why we fled.
Aid organizations are responding to the crisis, offering medical care. They say their teams are providing treatment to victims of war and sexual violence.
Here, we are promoting health and hygiene, but also directing them to our treatment clinics, because these sites are near the sites where we have clinics where we operate. So we provide primary health care, treatment for war injuries, and treatment for cases of sexual violence. Now, we are raising awareness and directing the sick and victims of sexual violence.
With M23 rebels pushing south, displaced families remain in limbo, unsure when it will be safe to return home. Meanwhile, pressure is mounting on Rwanda as international calls for a ceasefire intensify.
Puntland forces are making progress in their fight against the Islamic State in the region, capturing key locations despite heavy clashes. This comes as U.S. airstrikes target a senior Islamic State figure in Somalia, further intensifying the fight.
For nearly a month, Puntland security forces have been closing in on Islamic State hideouts in the region, with heavy fighting reported in Turmasal. Despite casualties on both sides, significant strides have been made by Puntland forces, who have successfully captured important areas. On Saturday, U.S. airstrikes targeted an Islamic State planner in the Golis Mountains, a move welcomed by Somalia's government. Puntland's military commander shares details of the ongoing operations against the Islamic State in the region. highlighting the strategy behind the offensive.
They, Islamic State, invaded the Bari region of Puntland and captured Kandala district. They also affected other districts. We decided not to just watch, sacrificing the lives of residents. Security forces led by the Puntland president started the preparation in November 2024. On 25th December 2024, the forces were deployed at Barjale of Iskushuban district.
With Puntland making substantial gains, the region is seeking additional support to continue its battle. Officials call for military aid to sustain the momentum against the Islamic State.
We ask the federal government to bring military supplies, for it is constitutionally required. This is part of the defense of the Indian Ocean and Red Sea. Puntland has managed to stop IS from coming out the hills and infiltrating into the locals. And now Puntland is fighting eyes in the hills. The federal should bring the equipment given to Somalia. And we urge the international community to participate in this global war, also by providing us with equipment.
As Puntland continues to push back against the Islamic State, the need for international and federal support becomes more critical. The conflict remains ongoing as both sides vie for control of key territories in the region.
South Africa's financial market slumped after US President Donald Trump announced a suspension of aid. Trump cited concerns over land expropriation, prompting a sharp drop in the rand and bond yields. The rand weakened by 1% on Monday, while stocks and government bonds fell after Trump declared he would cut US funding to South Africa. Without presenting evidence, he claimed certain groups were being treated unfairly and linked his decision to land expropriation days after President Ramaphosa signed a new land reform law. The announcement follows Trump's recent tariff hikes on Canada, Mexico, and China, fueling market uncertainty worldwide. South Africa's Mineral Resources Minister, Gwede Mantashe, has proposed withholding minerals from the US after President Donald Trump threatened to cut aid. Meanwhile, President Ramaphosa says he looks forward to engaging with Trump on the issue.
At a mining conference in Cape Town, Minister Gwede Mantashe called for Africa to leverage its mineral wealth after Trump announced a suspension of US aid to South Africa. Trump claims, without evidence, that land confiscation is underway. Mantashe says Africa must stop relying on external aid and instead use its vast mineral resources as leverage, thereby strengthen its global position.
You passed an Exploration Act, and therefore Trump would withhold funding to South Africa. And I said, let's not immobilize Africa. Let's withhold minerals to US. That is it. If they don't give us money, let's not give them minerals. But the reality, they take our minerals, but say why we're withdrawing funding. No, we have minerals in the continent, and therefore we have something that we have. We're not just beggars, but we must just use that endowment for our benefit as a continent. But if, as a continent, we are frightened, we fear everything, we are going to collapse, and will collapse with minerals at our doorstep. My appeal is that Africa is the world's richest mining jurisdiction. And that issue is an issue that we must internalize as a continent, use it to our advantage.
Ramaphosa recently signed a bill allowing land expropriation under specific conditions. The law aims to address racial disparities in land ownership that persist 3 decades after the end of apartheid in 1994.
South African civil society group AfriForum has backed US President Donald Trump's threat to cut aid from land reform policies. However, the group insists pressure should be placed on politicians rather than ordinary citizens.
The United States has been ripped
Trump claims South Africa is confiscating land and mistreating certain groups, but President Cyril Ramaphosa denies the claims. The U.S. provides nearly $440 million in aid annually, most of it for HIV/AIDS programs. AfriForum, a group advocating for Afrikaner rights, supports international criticism of South Africa's land policies, but rejects broad aid cuts that could affect ordinary citizens. Officials from AfriForum say the South African government's land reform bill undermines private property rights and calls for targeted international pressure.
From AfriForum's side, I can confirm what we communicated, and that was the fact that the South African government has passed a bill into law that threatens private property rights in South Africa, that makes expropriation without compensation possible, and this is a serious threat, and we want international criticism directed at the South African government for this attack against private property rights, but then also we want to see the politicians that push through these types of acts to be put pressure on by international actors. Donald Trump's side, there's clearly an investigation ongoing. He can decide how he puts pressure on South Africa. AfriForum requests from the President Trump, to put pressure particularly on the politicians pushing through these laws, seeing as AfriForum's stance is currently and has always been that the citizens of South Africa should not be punished for the reckless behavior of the politicians in South Africa.
As South Africa defends its policies, pressure mounts from both domestic and international actors, raising concerns over the future of U.S. aid and economic relations.
French troops formally completed their withdrawal from Chad on Friday. It marked the end of France's military presence after nearly 70 years. The last French soldiers left the military base in N'Djamena, as confirmed by President Mahamat Idriss Deby.
A ceremony at a military base in the Chadian capital N'Djamena last Friday marked the end of France's military presence in the Central African nation. The French military presence in Chad, a former French colony, dates back to the country's independence in 1960. It was initially aimed at training the newly formed Chadian military. However, the Chadian president Mahamat Idriss Deby hailed the departure of French troops as a new dawn for Chad.
Today, Chad is drawing all the lessons from this form of military cooperation. Distinguished guests, dear compatriots, this January 31st, 2025 marks the definitive and complete withdrawal of French forces stationed in Chad.
Citizens across Chad have acknowledged the historical significance of the withdrawal.
As a Chadian, I had the chance to witness a historic event marking the end of an era of French military presence, which has existed in another form since 1900. So, this is a historic event that leaves no one indifferent, including myself.
Chad announced the end of its military cooperation with France on November 28th. The withdrawal from Chad is part of a broader reduction in France's military footprint across West Africa. French forces have also been ordered to leave Niger, Burkina Faso and Mali, whilst negotiations are underway in Senegal. As French influence wanes in the region, some African nations are turning to Russia for military assistance by signing military deals and inviting Russian troops to train their armed forces.
That's all we have today on Africa News. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to A News.